Hi all, in this video I'm going to explain the concept of level curves to you using just a lot of pictures to make it as kind of vivid as possible. So let's get going here. First, let me just draw a coordinate system. So a 2D depiction of a 3D coordinate system. Okay, that's going to be our z-axis. Let's also make this our x-axis, and let's also make this, say, our y-axis. Let's label these here. So this will be x, y, and then this is z. And now what we need to do next is draw some kind of surface in here. So let me do that. Let's take a look here. There we are. And imagine the surface looks like this. It's just some surface. We just need to hint at it. I don't want to make it too dark. And then imagine that it passes through the XY plane in the bottom like that. So this is just some surface. There's nothing special about choosing this particular shape. It's just some shape. Once this is in place, so our next goal will be to do this. Take a look here. I'm going to choose a couple of values of z. So for example, I'm going to draw a line this way to there, and another value of z, say a line from there to there. And what we want to do is study the slope roughly in this area right here. So let me zoom out. To do that, take a look. I'm going to draw a line straight down this way and then this way. And let's study this a little bit. So here is basically, as you can see, it looks like a little slope triangle that perhaps you've seen before. And that slope, more or less, is pretty much this right here, isn't it? So what I'm going to do now to emphasize that is use solid line. A piece this way, a piece this way, and a piece this way. And as you can see, this is pretty much just a slope triangle of the kind you have seen before. Take a look at the distance on the bottom right here. It's related in this sense. Look at the spread between these 2 points right here that I've just traced over in green. Right now, when you look at it by itself, it's simply equal to this leg of the triangle. So the next goal is we have to be able to compare this to something. So take a look at what I mean here. Right now by itself it's not very meaningful. But let's compare it, and then you will see that it actually does have meaning in the following sense. Take a look. I'm going to repeat the drawing something similar on this other side. So it's going to look like this, in other words. Okay, so that roughly looks like this, and then another one here that roughly looks like that. And as before, let's draw a line straight down. So one will look like this and the other one will look like that. Now let me emphasize some key points. You see that this spacing here is not too dissimilar from the spacing on this side. So this spacing pretty much matches that spacing here. So what is that telling us? Roughly speaking, what it's telling us is the following piece of information, that this is about the same. So if I draw in a triangle, let's do that next. Let me draw a triangle in here. It's like a little slope triangle. Let me do it in black so that it looks like this and like that. You see that this slope triangle is not too dissimilar, except for the fact that we are looking at it from a different angle from the other slope triangle. So this slope triangle and this slope triangle, they're not too dissimilar. So that means that over here, the following you can pretty much conclude. That if you were to climb over here, like that, that slope that you experience would be about the same as the slope that you experience on that side. Now, let's do something a little bit different. Let's repeat this for the top, and then we'll see what the difference is exactly. So for example, I might first do this. I'll draw a line this way, and then I'll draw another line this way. And let's again draw a little slope triangle so we can compare things. So let me put this straight down this way and then straight down that way. So here the spacing on the bottom, this is the spacing on the bottom, like that. So you see this spacing is bigger than the previous one. So in other words, like this spacing is wider than this spacing here. You see this is more narrow than this one. What it's telling you is the following. You see the vertical change is the same for both of them. So for example, what I mean is here. This vertical change, we'll call that delta z. You see how that's delta z here? It's 2 units, 2 spaces in a vertical dimension. And it's the same 2 over here also. This is also delta z. But what it's telling us beyond that is the following, that because this here is wider than this, you see that up here on the actual surface itself, you see that this is bigger. So in other words, this slope is gentler than that other slope. So what it's telling us is, roughly speaking, climbing over here would be easier than climbing in the other one, for example. These are rough approximations to get the idea across. And you can even estimate these slopes if you think about it. So for example, this slope as an estimate. So let me write down an estimate of the slope. So the slope here estimated, well, it's a change of 2 in the vertical divided by a change of 1 along the horizontal axis. So the slope is basically 2 over 1, which is 2. But over here, this slope, roughly speaking, is different because, as you can see, let me emphasize this point, count it. It's about, let's see, 1, 2, so maybe like 2.5 along this leg and 2 up that leg. So that slope, as you can see, would be the vertical, delta z, so that's 2, divided by the horizontal, which is about 2.5. So that's a different value for the slope. That slope is gentler, in other words. And what it means is that down along the y-axis, don't forget that the horizontal axis here is the y-axis, this spacing, this is the key idea, this spacing is bigger for the gentle slope than it is, for example, for the small slope right here. Let's also repeat this on the other side. Okay, so let me grab some dashed lines. Okay, so again, it's going to go to about here, and then it's going to go, say, to about here. And let's project down, again, to the x-axis now. So straight down, you have to keep things aligned to the best of our ability. So that's that, and then also straight down over here, just the way you see it. And now this is a little bit different. Think about this for 1 second. For this second piece over here, you see this spacing is about 2 spaces. That, because it's at a different angle, obviously, at least we can tell it's not 2 units right here. So let me emphasize this key point right here. Right, that leg and that leg, they give a slope triangle, an average slope. So let me put the average slope down. It looks like this. When you project this down over here, I'm going to do that, let's see, in a different color like red. I'm projecting that portion down to the x-axis over here. So take a look. It's this spacing from here to here. You can tell just by a visual inspection that the red portion here is definitely more narrow, in fact. So that's telling you something important again, which is the following, that over here, if you were to climb this one, you would experience that as something harder than on the other side. In other words, climbing here feel harder than climbing here. We can incorporate level curves into that. So let's be very careful about the way we approach that. Level curves. So a level curve you get simply by slicing across a surface parallel to the XY plane. So when we do that here, what I'm going to do is draw kind of like the intersection. So it might be a line that kind of looks like this, you see? And then another line at this level that looks like that, roughly speaking. So those are our slices. Make that a bit brighter here. Okay, let's make that in blue. There we are. So those are our slices across the surface parallel to the XY plane. If you look at it very carefully, this top right here that you see, right, this top, this is parallel to the XY plane. And the one under it, right here, that's also parallel to the XY plane down below. So now what we're going to do next is project these down to the XY plane so we can draw the level curves. So if I do the first one, that roughly will look like this. And if I do the second one, that roughly will look like this. And what you observe here is the following. Take a look. You see that here, this spacing is wider and this spacing is more narrow. What it's telling you is the following, that up here on the actual graphs, up here, this slope is smaller than this slope. So when you have level curves, like there's 2 blue lines here, and the spacing between them is relatively narrow, what it tells you is that up top, or like right here on the actual surface, the slope is pretty big. On the other hand, it also tells us the following, that over here, when the spacing between the level curves is bigger, what it tells you is that up here, for that slope triangle, that's a gentler slope. Thank you so much for watching. If this has been helpful, please take the time to leave a like. I appreciate it. I'll see you in another video.